Yes, you do. Okay, I'm just going to share this feed, and then we'll be live. Okay. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us again tonight for another Wednesday night. These are the Area Scouts Procast. We do these live every Wednesday night, which feature our top advisors, directors, and some special guests that we'll have here on different Wednesday nights, as well as being able to cover upcoming events on these streams as well, giving our public that information about anything that we have coming up. Tonight, we have our normal host, Director of Sports Medicine, Dr. Anthony Inzillo, as well as our Director of Baseball Ops, Brian Murray, and myself, CEO of Area Scouts, Lance Baldwin. Tonight, we have a special guest, is one of our Assistant National Director of Defensive Backs for Area Scouts football tonight, is Siddeeq Shabazz. He is going to also be overseeing our upcoming Area Scouts base football camps that Brian is going to touch on tonight as well when he goes through his presentation at the end. First, Brian will do a brief interview, and we'll open it up to Q&A for Siddeeq as well on this call prior to kind of going over the athlete parent side of the platform with Brian. So Area Scouts is a one-of-a-kind platform that focuses on athlete health as well as athlete development. I'm going to introduce some of our team that we have here. And then, as I said, we're going to go through the interview with Siddeeq and then go through the platform quickly and then open it up to Q&A. So on the screen, I'm going to share my screen. So we have currently right now 5 different sports we've introduced into the platform. We have baseball and softball is what we originally launched with last year. We introduced football earlier this year, as well as rolling out volleyball. We're currently working on rugby and hockey as well to bring this to the platform. So anyone that is interested in being part of this, whether it be on the evaluator side or on the athlete side for athlete accounts, it is a free account. And again, Brian will go through that process to be able to sign up on the platform, get a free account, and start the process through Area Scouts. I'm not going to go through the individual names for every sport because it does take a little bit of a time. But if you see on the every sport that we have here featured, baseball is either current or former pro athletes. We also have 3 Olympians currently on board, Josh Zeid, Ryan Lavarnway are just actually getting their first game in tomorrow in the 2021 Olympics in Japan. And Joey Lai proudly just represented Canada and brought, or is bringing home currently, she's flying home right now as we speak, bringing home the bronze medal for Team Canada in softball. So excited to have her back and continuing on the platform with her program. On the football side, we also have Dejuan Harris, Director of Running Backs, played with Green Bay. Cecil Shorts, Director of Wide Receivers, played with the Jaguars. Reggie Rusk, Director of Defensive Backs, played with the Chargers. And Mike Hollis played with the Jacksonville Jaguars as a kicker and punter. Siddeeq, who is our special guest tonight, also played in the NFL for the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm going to hand this over to Brian and let him go on with the interview with Siddeeq. And you can share your screen, Brian, if you want to share it now, or I can keep this up until you want to share yours.
Yeah, why don't you just keep it up for now, and then I'll share it right after the interview, Lance. That'd be great. Thank you. Hi, Siddeeq. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, man. Good. I'm glad you joined us tonight. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
So I'm just going to run through a series of questions with you and kind of get to know you, know your previous background, kind of get to know what you're doing now, your involvement with Area Scouts. And so I'll just jump right into it here. So you played football at New Mexico State, which is in the Sun Belt Conference, and you were a 2-time Sun Belt All-Conference player. how did you get recruited? What was that process like? And, what made you make the decision to go to New Mexico State?
So I actually was not being recruited out of high school. I was a little bit undersized and didn't really have a great career in high school. I played my freshman year and my senior year, and I had to walk on to New Mexico State. So I had visited the local schools, UTEP Miners, NMSU Aggies, and UNM up north. One of my older brothers just took me out there hustling, trying to get on somewhere. And eventually the Aggies, New Mexico State, came down and watched me work out and offered me a walk-on position, not a scholarship position. So it actually took me a couple of years before I earned a scholarship. And New Mexico State that's our home university. I got several degrees there from there now, but my brothers all attended that university for the most part. So my family's kind of been intimately involved with New Mexico State. So that was kind of always in the plan. Playing football wasn't really in the plan. That kind of came about kind of out of the blue my senior year. I thought I was done when I finally got that opportunity to go walk on.
Yeah, I think this is so great for young athletes out there, because everybody thinks that you go through the process, you're recruited out of high school, you get a scholarship, you have to go D1 to make the pros, and then you get into the pros. And two of our directors, Reggie Rusk, as you know, and I know you work with him on some of our videos for our athletes and evaluators. Reggie Rusk started out in JUCO. He wasn't recruited at all out of high school. And then similar to you, he kind of proved himself out of JUCO and was able to get that, scholarship and start playing, at the high level in college, and then ended up getting drafted. So it's just amazing to hear some of these stories, because I think a lot of people out there just think you have to do this kind of process or you don't have a shot, but you do, you really do.
Yeah. Being in the league, there's so many unique stories and so many different pathways to making it to the NFL. And like two of my favorite stories are Lance Moore, who ended up playing well for the Saints, and Ryan Clark, both teammates of mine who I got to see when they were nobody, and I was nobody there too. And their careers ended up taking off, and they had quite the great career that they were both free agents who ended up coming off of practice roster and making a name for themselves at that level. And there's many pathways, and I think I love what you guys do, because I think if you have fundamentals right, if you have the basics right from the beginning, and then you're able to build on that, to me, that's what got me there. Were having some fundamentals that I was able to build on. That was my foundation. And a lot of guys who were recruited that I played with, that were always the best in their community, in their high school, and in their college, they didn't have to work on the fundamentals. That I love the assessment that's been created with area scouts, because it's breaking down technique and getting fundamentals right. And that's what all the on-field assessments are about. So that's what attracted me to area scouts. And I think that's what athletes really need to hear is, like, you don't know. There's so many things that happen by luck, by chance, by just being in the right place in the right time. Somebody gets injured and your career can have a totally different outcome in the NFL. There's so few opportunities in the NFL. You never know what's going to get you there. So having the fundamentals right, I think, is something that's the number one thing that every athlete should be thinking about before they're thinking about college and pros.
Absolutely agree. So tell me, as a youth athlete, and this is a two-part question here. As a youth athlete, was football your only passion, or did you play other sports? And, typically starting to see, and what I'm starting to see and hear from a lot of different coaches around the country, is that, we're seeing a lot of youth athletes that are focusing on one sport at a young age, whether it be 10, 11, 12, playing it year round. And then that's the sport they just continue to play all the time, all year round. So what is your thoughts on the 2 or 3 sport athlete as a youth?
So football was I loved football from the time I was a kid. I didn't love watching it. I just loved playing it. I remember from kindergarten on, just always, the football was always a part of my life. I ended up playing running track as well. I love track. That was another love of mine, but nothing as passionate as football. And I wasn't really a great athlete growing up, so I couldn't play basketball. Baseball, I think economics kept me out of baseball as a youth. But I see there kind of being the level of play is getting, I think, more and more competitive at younger ages, and people are focusing in on one sport. So it's almost like this natural evolution to becoming one sport athletes if you have plans to make it to that next level. But I don't really think it's the best for kids. I say you should at least be running track, but the more sports that you can play and be exposed to at a younger age, I don't think at a young age like where you're really going to excel, and maybe you're going to have a growth spurt, maybe you're not. And there's just so much value to playing other sports. I wish now that I wasn't so kind of insecure about my basketball abilities that I would have at least tried to play basketball and tried to play some of those other sports. I think you lose that element of fun when it becomes serious. At like the earlier that it becomes serious and you're just focused in on one sport, I think like most of sport is about the joy of sport, and turning it into business at 12 years old and just saying I'm just going to focus on baseball because Major League Baseball is what my trajectory. I think you do a disservice to kids, and I think a lot of times that probably plays into kids not playing their sport for a long period of time because it becomes so serious, and then stuff happens, you know what I mean? So I'm not a fan of it, but I think it's almost hard for kids to avoid it if they're serious about making it to college or something like that.
Yeah, I think there's an element of burnout there, right? If you start at 10 and you decide, and I'm just going to play baseball and all year round, and by the time you get to 17, you're like, man, I've already played a career worth of baseball, right? So,
yeah, I've seen a lot of kids, they get to college and like the passion, it's like they made it where they wanted to make it, and they were training with me since they were 8 years old, and then a year later they're done playing ball, and it's like, just done. Like,
yeah, I mean, I played football and baseball throughout high school, and then played 1 year of college football and 4 years of baseball. But I remember my baseball coach coming to me in college freshman year and saying, all right, you're not getting injured, you're not playing football, you're here to play baseball, let's make the decision. So, and I did, and it was the best thing for me at the time, and was my true passion. But I think that decision definitely is good down the road instead of early on in your youth sports.
Yeah. I think at that college level, it would be kind of difficult. I wish my school had track. We didn't have track when I was in college, but outside of that, it would probably be pretty difficult to play college sports.
Yeah, can you believe Joey Lai played hockey and softball?
I didn't know that about him. But
that's crazy, huh?
the guy up there in the Olympics,
yeah, that's crazy. All right. So, you're the assistant national director of defensive backs. You're the area scout state evaluator in football for New Mexico. What do you hope to accomplish with youth athletes on the platform? And I know you already said what attracted you to this was, the fundamentals and really breaking down the athlete for the fundamentals. But what do you hope to accomplish, through your service through area scouts and to youth athletes?
So I think a lot of things have been changing over the last few years of my life. And I think George Floyd was a big pivotal moment for our country. And for me, it really got me impassioned about really just how we can live in such a great country and still have people have such disparate outcomes in life for some individuals. And I live in one of the poorest counties in one of the poorest states in our great country, and just seeing the amount of poverty and just the lack of access. And maybe it's not even just the lack of access, it's the lack of ability to bring quality programs and services and resources to especially those marginalized communities, but even just New Mexico in general. When like I was just talking to a buddy of mine that I played college ball with, and he was recruited to the university. For 3 years, he was the top in the state. He had to be the best wide receiver in New Mexico to get offered a scholarship to New Mexico State, lower tier Division I school. And outside of being that top kid in New Mexico, there's not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of recruiting, but there's also not a whole lot of training, a whole lot of great preparation for the next level if sports is what you're into. But I think beyond that, it's just everything. We don't, one thing that I've always noticed about, especially in my community, is we have a university here. We graduate all these people who go off and do excellent things, but they're always doing them outside of New Mexico. If you want an opportunity, it's going to be outside of New Mexico. When I graduated college, first thing I was thinking is, let me get out of New Mexico so I can go be successful. And I want to be a part of one, showing like I've always enjoyed saying, hey, I'm from the same place that you're from. I didn't have this privileged upbringing. I didn't have all these camps to go to as a young athlete, and I made it. But I also want to be that voice, drawing people back here and saying, let's build opportunities. Let's give these. I had to really fight, and like I was lucky to make it where I made it. How can we make it more accessible to other young athletes from New Mexico, especially from my community, but also especially from those marginalized community? So what I want to do with Area Scouts is utilize this platform to give kids access to, you just talked about some of those Olympians, but all these professional athletes that they have access to as resources, as mentors, as an example. I'm sure that all of these people, I haven't had the opportunity to meet most of the team, but Reggie Rusk, just talking to him, great story, great guy, just his passion for his community, same thing, just people all over the country with different stories, but who have had that taste of success. Part of what I think helped me to make it where I made it as well, in my little, like nobody knows where my high school is, the town, I had 3 guys with NFL ties. One of them has been a scout for the Dallas Cowboys for about 20 something years now. One of them has 2 Super Bowl rings from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and somehow they were my coaches at Gadsden High School. And those were the 3 guys who talked me into walking on to New Mexico State. So there's an element to expectation when you've been to that higher level. The other guy had a shot with the Broncos from New Mexico State before he blew out his knee and his career was ended. But those 3 men, they had a different vision of what was possible because they were connected to something bigger than what any of us here in New Mexico typically see, the type of coaches that we see, not knocking them. We have passionate people in our community, but I think you set a ceiling when all you see is people graduating high school and trying to get a job to go support their family, which isn't a bad thing, but there's so much opportunity. And I feel like people stunt their potential when they aren't exposed to more possibilities. And that's what I want to do with this team, is expose my community, expose New Mexico to as many possibilities as possible, and help young athletes start out with the right technique, with the right base, with the right foundation, where they're not looking at this single-minded approach to their sport, but seeing that like athleticism carries over, fundamentals carry over, and you might not go pro, but you can get a little bit better with technique, with the right coaching, with the right mindset. And that's what I'm excited about bringing to my community with Area Scouts.
That's great, man. Good stuff. Thank you. All right. So you were drafted in the NFL by the Oakland Raiders, 2003. And we always hear this about football. The game is so much faster between college and NFL. What was your experience in adjusting to the game at that level after playing, at New Mexico State?
So for me, I think the speed wasn't as big of a challenge. So speed, I I was a combine all-star. I learned technique from some great coaches along the way, and I would kill any workout that I had. Like I had played on, I think, 11 different professional teams because I had a great agent. And when I worked out well. And that speed wasn't a challenge for me. The biggest challenge to me was actually the mental part of the game, the football IQ, playing only 2 years in high school, and then being at a smaller Division I college where we didn't have, like, I remember playing for Nick Saban with the Dolphins, and I could not make the adjustments that he had us making in. I honestly can't even tell you what we were doing. We would go from man and shift with motion and go into a zone, and it was so complex that and my football IQ at that point was just so low. And I'd say that the 3 years that I was in the NFL, that was probably my biggest challenge to overcome, that I just never really was able to catch up on. But the speed, I was a fast guy. I ran a 4.29 40 for my coaches, and I think a 4.33 for the scouts on my pro day. So everyone's fast. It was amazing to see how some of these linemen, that's what I try and talk to kids about, is like, especially here in New Mexico, like, we're not used to this high level of athleticism and competition that you get if you're like in a Texas or a California. You see it all the time. Here, it's only the standouts. Like, I was one of few guys that was running at that speed, and you could see me on film moving at a different pace. But in the NFL, like, linemen are moving like my DBs and linebackers moved in college. You know what I mean? So that was what was super impressive. Everyone was an athlete at that next level for the most part, and that was super impressive. And it's just an eye opener for guys around here that even small Division I schools, when we'd go and play the Georgias and the Texas Longhorns, like, it was those guys. It seemed like those guys wouldn't have the same adjustment. They're playing at a level like they're already NFL caliber, like, entire teams. For us, we'd have a couple standouts, and we'd go up there to Texas and just be blown away by big linebackers, big linemen who just were moving and fast and strong and had it all.
Awesome. Last question for you. So tell us what you're doing right now, like what you're involved in, and also, I did see that you posted a camp. So talk a little bit about that. You posted a camp that you were doing a couple weeks ago on social media. So give us a lowdown on what's going on in Siddeeq's world right now.
All right. So I recently graduated. I got my PhD in marketing from New Mexico State after, I think, 12 years of interaction with that university, probably. That was this December, and my life has just been shifting. And like I said, George Floyd really got me wanting to be in a space where I can make an impact. And after George Floyd's death, that was something that I said, no matter where I'm at, no matter what I do, there's going to be, like, I have to be engaged and involved in just the division, just the issue, I guess. There's been so much divisiveness, even in my community, that, like, I'm a community guy, and it's been tugging at my heart. And I decided athletics, like, it's something that I actually moved away from until, I think, recently. So that camp was me putting myself back out there, that, like, football, like, I tried to move away from football, become this professional. I felt like it was a kid's game. And a lot of guys, I think, have that notion that it's time to do real life. And I think I kind of snubbed myself by separating myself from the NFL. And it was this year was the first time that on my LinkedIn, I put that I actually had this professional football career, that now I realize that's one of the biggest things that I contribute when I show up to a job, is that was an accomplishment that says so much about work ethic, stick to itness, get her done, like, just all these intangible things that I think leadership, that leaders need. That NFL career, I think, speaks to that, and that CFL career, and just an 8-year professional career. It says something about me as a human being that now I want to claim. And in that, like, I want to claim it for myself, but I want to claim it for my community. I came from Chaparral, New Mexico, went to Gadsden High School, small little towns. And as I'm claiming it for myself, what I want to do is bring people along with me, bring those resources. The NFL has been doing a great job with the social justice stuff and trying to make an impact, and working with former NFL players to be present in our communities around social justice, making a positive impact in our country and having a positive voice. And that's what my camps and my football, flag football, it's reaching these youth with a platform saying, like, we can do it. It's been done, and bringing access. And just, so I'm starting a NFL flag league here in New Mexico. I'll be talking to those guys tomorrow. I just went to the NFL Flag Summit. Education is a huge part of everything. If we're talking about making a difference, education, our community, our state is really low in education as well. So if there's ways to combine my passion for athletics and education together, that's what I'm trying to do. I just got a contract to teach at New Mexico State, so I'll be teaching in the marketing and management department for the next year at least, which is huge opportunity to be here in my home and be able to work with my PhD is going to be awesome. And that's what I want to do, is help bring high quality athletics to my small community, but to my state, bring in the resources like area scouts. The NFL flag is doing some awesome stuff to pull people together and help us build a community, especially with former NFL players that hopefully will come here and help be a part of my camps and my league. And just building, I want to have some more camps. We're talking about putting together some area scouts base camps that I think will be awesome to just highlight what we're able to do for kids, and really just show them where they're at and how balanced and symmetric they are in their athletics and opportunities to improve in a healthy way. So I think that kind of globally, those are the things that I'm working on. I'll be teaching and raising the standard of athletics here in my community as best I can.
Yeah, you've been busy.
Super busy.
Congrats on the doctorate, man. It's awesome.
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
Lance or Anthony, do you have any questions for Siddeeq?
I would like to actually I've about 11 questions here. And I kind of picked out 5 of them. So I'd like to, this is from some of our, 2 of our feeds that we have out. So I'm going to let them ask Siddeeq these questions. So we have Mark from Indiana. Do you have personal coaches that trained you individually when you were younger, and what age did you start doing that?
Never. Never. I never had. The first time I had an individual coach, my agent sent me to Arizona after I was drafted. No, it was like 2 weeks before the pro day. I had 2 weeks to work with, I think it was Fisher Sports or something like that in Arizona. That was the only time I ever had any personal type training. It was not something that people were doing as much as they are now. That was almost 20 years ago now. And I think I didn't have the resources growing up. My family had a big family, single income. We would have never, I couldn't pay to play baseball, to get the equipment for baseball. So there was no paying for any sports. I played the high school sports, and we were limited on how many sports we were able to play and raise our own money to play our sports. So I never had any individualized coaching, but I've always been kind of a self-motivated guy. I was training myself. I had some great coaches, I have to say that. But I think I just had a natural gift to kinesthetic intelligence. So I can see stuff and apply it. And that's why I coach now, is because I think I have an eye and my body they work together in that way. And I know a lot of athletes, they don't have that, and they have to have somebody telling them how to do something. Once somebody shows me something and tells me how to do it, it kind of sticks for me. And that was a gift that helped me along the way with a lot of awesome coaches who just poured into me, showed me technique, and so never had a personal trainer until 2 weeks before my pro day. in college. So at 20 years old.
Another question: how did you find your agent?
Interesting story. It actually, one of those high school coaches of mine, somebody flew me out to Texas. There were guys coming after me when I was my senior year and trying to woo you in different ways. Somebody flew me out to California and tried to show me the good life of California. Somebody else flew me out to Texas and tried to show me the clubs and stuff like that. And I did not feel comfortable with there were 3 different people that I saw and wasn't comfortable with them. And then my high school coach who had that shot, his agent was Harold Lewis, who, if anybody saw, there was a one-time reality show, The Best Agent or Super Agent. He actually won that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Show. You remember that? So that was my agent, Harold Lewis. Awesome dude. Funny story. But my high school coach I told him I was looking for an agent. He said, call this guy. I flew out to St. Louis to see Harold and he was the most genuine guy I ever met. Just cool, down to earth, and I felt comfortable right away. He got me so many opportunities. He'd been doing it since I think he got injured in college playing baseball, and then his buddy in college was getting recruited, and he started being his agent. He's also in some like 1980s rap song because he was an agent for a famous rap song. I was driving one day like 3 years after I got drafted, and I heard they mentioned Harold Lewis, and I called Harold and I was like, "Is that you on this rap song?" And he told me the story about how he was those guys' agent.
So he kind of did it the unconventional. Did he end up? Was he an attorney as well, or did he kind of just do it unconventional? Yeah,
did it unconventionally. He has one of the biggest agencies, I think, in the country, NSA, National Sports Agency. He was always awesome.
We got to get him on one of these Wednesday nights and interview him. That would be a great story to hear.
When I was teaching a couple years ago, he's all about it. He zoomed into one of my classes to talk to my sports marketing class one time. He would definitely do it. He's a great guy. I haven't talked to him in a while. It'll be good to reach back out to him. I was lucky to have such a high caliber agent just because of a relationship. That's one of the things. Relationships are everything in anything that you do, and just having that relationship with my old high school coach, where when I graduated, he was able to recommend somebody that thought well of him because of his relationship, and it proved out to be a blessing for me. That my 8-year career, it was because Harold Lewis had relationships with everybody, would call, would sell me. Sometimes he would oversell me, and they thought I would.
I'm sure a little bit of your talent had something to do with it too. I don't care who he knows, you still got to be good. Did you ever face issues with politics of youth athletics? My son is 12 years old. It seems like kids are getting attention based on who they know and which dads are coaching the team. Do you ever face this? And do you feel it's something that, as a parent, I should address with the coaching staff, or focus more on getting my son the training he needs to eventually find the positions he should play?
Yeah, it's a tough market out there. And I know that, like, I didn't play youth athletics. I just played football 8th grade, 9th grade, and senior year, and ran track in high school. But I train a lot of athletes who do participate in youth athletics. Here, it's not super competitive like that, but in Texas, but even here, like, parents coach, and they coach because they want their son or daughter to be a star. And I think you have to be wise about the teams that you choose to be on, or you are going to deal with that. And I think you can kind of, when a parent is coaching because they want their kid to be a star. I think if you watch them for a little while, you can kind of pick that out. And I think it's hard to be on a team like that. And I don't know at what level you really need to be super concerned. I don't know if this is a baseball player. I think they start recruiting a lot earlier than football does. If it's a baseball, it's probably a little bit more serious. But if it's football or basketball or something like that, I think train your kid to work hard. I think there's so many people who the expectation is they're going to be awesome because they've been at the forefront all of their life. And for me, it was the opposite of that. And it can go either way. For me, not being the star, nobody thinking that I was gonna make anything, but having this deep work ethic that was ingrained in me from youth, from my upbringing, while other people stayed the same, while those kids whose parents put them in front and they were the all-star on their soccer team, and then they came to NMSU and they were the star from the beginning, those are the guys who I ran a 4.8 40, they ran a 4.5 40. Next year I ran a 4.7, they ran a 4.5. Next year I ran a 4.6 until I'm running a 4.3 and they're still running a 4.5. And that's just an example. That's not realistic, but in training, like I'm working hard the whole time because I didn't have a shot. I was 2-time Sun Belt Conference. Those were the only 2 years I ever was able to step on the field. We had seniors, we had starters who were there until my junior year, and 3 of us had to battle it out for strong safety. One guy had been locked into that free safety position from his freshman year. So 3 of us were battling for that position, and I could never let up off the gas, even my junior and senior year, because I had some amazing athletes, same size, same strength, same desire to play. That work ethic to me is what made my career. I had to play special teams forever. That was the only burn I got when I was in high school. When I was in college for those first 3 years. In the NFL, all my highlights are me running down on scout team. That's how I made it. On special teams, I was a workhorse. So even when I was starting at NMSU, I ran down on special teams. It was part of who I was. A lot of guys, they get a starting spot and they're off special teams. But for me, I never arrived. I didn't arrive until I retired at 30 years old. And I still didn't arrive. I wanted more. It was just time for me to hang it up. And I believe that training people fundamentals and having that work ethic where it's not about being the star, but if you love the game, you're going to make the most out of every opportunity. I knew I had to retire when I hated practice. I was 30 years old up in Canada. It was cold and I could not make myself excited about practice anymore. I was like, yeah, it's time to hang it up. But before that, I loved practice. Football was everything to me, and I could always get better. There's always somebody pushing me to take my spot, or I just had to, there were more goals ahead of me. I think that those elements, I think, are more important than anything that you can control, like playing time, who the coach is. You definitely want to get your son as they get into high school with a good coach who's going to treat him fairly, but a lot of things are outside of your control. Help them control the things that they can. Mindset, finish. Most kids that I train, they don't like to finish. They're 97 percenters, and I say greatness is in the 3%. Teach your child, your young athlete, to do that last 3% like a champion. Most people do 97% the best that they can. But the greatness and excellence, I think, is in that last 3%.
And last question. Always wanted to hear professional perspective on this. What percentage of talent would you say you were born with, and what percent did you have to work hard to increase? Say if it took 100% to get to the NFL, what were you born with, and what did you have to work to increase to that level?
Yeah, for every athlete, it's different. For me, I wasn't born big, fast, and strong. I think the gift that I was born with that knack for kinesthetic, just the body movement. And I think that helped me. I think like I was a slow kid and I was a late bloomer. I don't think I started becoming athletic until like my senior year in college. So I'd say I was born with 20, 25, 35% of the athleticism and trained myself. But I think I'm unique. Not very unique. I'm sure there's more guys out there like me, but I think the majority of the guys, they're great throughout. They're at the top. I wasn't at the top ever, not even until my junior year in college was I at that top level. So I'd say most of the guys that I see, they're bigger, they're faster, and they're stronger naturally. I'd probably say it's closer to like 65% of it they're born with, but then you have to take it up to that 95th percentile somewhere along the way. And either it's going to be in the gym, it's going to be your brain learning the game so much better than other guys that maybe you can not be as fast, but you're so smart that you're going to be there. Linebacker for the Dolphins was one of my most inspiring guys. He was 5'10", 220 maybe. I can't remember his name. You guys would know him if you're football fans. Short little white linebacker, had like a 14-year career. He was just awesome. Who's that?
Zach Thomas?
Zach Thomas. He was a beast. He was like my size, playing middle linebacker for 14, 15 years in the NFL against beasts. And that was a guy who was super smart. He didn't have the size, but he obviously worked out to have the athleticism, but just his brain, the way he watched film and knew the game was awesome.
Thank you, Siddeeq. We're going to stop there. We have some more questions. If anyone wants to ask those on in the Facebook group on the YouTube channel, then I can send those links to Siddeeq. But we're going to have Brian share his screen and walk through the process of getting your athletes on board. Thank you, Siddeeq.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys. This was fun.
All right. So when we have our interviews, I go through this fairly quickly, but if you have any questions on the program, you can always email me at Brian, BRYAN @areascouts.com. So the first thing our athletes go through when they come on to the Area Scouts program is the B.A.S.E assessment. B.A.S E stands for biomechanics, athleticism, sequence, and endurance. Anthony is going to go over this in a little more detail after I speak, so I'm not going to go over it too much. I will just say that our B.A.S E assessment is, a complete overall assessment of the athlete's physical foundation. So they're gonna find out what they need to work on to be a better athlete, as Siddeeq was talking about. Get to that next level, making sure your body's moving right, you have the right strength, agility, endurance to be able to perform better on the field of play. Okay, so the next step is an on-field assessment, and this is geared towards softball and baseball right now. We have football and volleyball as well that are rolling out as we speak, but they're going to be very similar. So we're going to assess the players for fundamentals, just like Siddeeq was talking about, looking at how they play the game and what we can do from a technique standpoint to make them better performers. So from a baseball and softball standpoint, we're looking at catching, fielding, pitching, hitting. We're taking video, we're breaking it down. We're looking at the pitching delivery, looking at how they swing, where their hands are, their head, how they're using their body. They have the proper weight distribution, all the things that they need to perform well. And then we're also going to, from a baseball and softball standpoint, we're going to get metrics on them. All these metrics have become a mainstay in recruiting, a mainstay in seeing what your performance is. So we're going to look at their exit velos and hitting and the distance off the bat, their bat speed, pitching velocities. We're going to do some glove to glove times in fielding and top velocities while they're throwing in the field. And then we're also going to get those pop times for catchers. So you're going to get a complete set of metrics. We're going to take video, we're going to break it down for fundamentals, and then we're going to give you that development afterwards to help you get better. And that's what I'll go over as I go through the profile. Getting started is very easy on Area Scouts. Come on for B.A.S E, get your B.A.S E, and then when you want to do your sports evaluation, you do your sports evaluation next. Again, if you're baseball, softball, football, volleyball, those are all the sports we're in right now. And it's very affordable for every family. So for B.A.S E, we're including 2 months on the Area Scouts platform for the B.A.S E development is only $117. After those 2 months, it's only $10 per month. So very affordable, as Siddeeq was saying, even affordable for some of the families that really, are struggling out there in society right now. We can still, provide them with professional development, that usually costs thousands of dollars a year to get easy access for all these athletes. Some of our partnerships here, New England AAU Baseball is a partner of ours, the Scout Hub, which we personally don't do recruiting. We have some D1 college coaches on our director staff. So we do not do any college recruiting here, but the Scout Hub can help you with those with those needs. We also have Diamond Connects that we use for a lot of our metrics for. Partnership with Sports Thread. This is where you can self-promote. Take your metrics, take your videos, and I'll go over that in a little bit, but Sports Thread is where you would promote through us and be able to get to reach some of those college coaches. And then we have some athletic gear that we also have sponsorships with. All right, so looking at the Area Scouts platform, this is what the sign-in looks like. You would click athlete login, and then you would come on and have your athlete page here. Tons of information. There's an Area Scout shop, but there's also a lot of personal information, so you can track how you're doing and how you're changing over your youth career. And then down the bottom, there's a lot of different information that you can utilize. You can request an evaluation, request training. Requesting training would be used if you wanted some one-on-one individual training with your evaluator. Some evaluators do this, some do not, and they can point you in the right direction of the coach that they feel would be best for you. So we want our evaluators to be your one-stop shop for everything related to your sport, be able to point you in the right direction, get you the right development you need. Me personally, I do pitching lessons, hitting lessons. I have our Connecticut state baseball evaluator that is unbelievable as a hitting instructor. So I direct a lot of people to him to help with the hitting part. You can also ask a question or contact your evaluator directly. If you want to become a base athlete or a premium athlete for your sport, you can click on these buttons. It's going to take you to how to sign up for that. And then your evaluator will contact you directly. This is also where you're going to access, once you enroll, there will be buttons here that you can access your information. In here, you're going to have a ton of information that we're going to get from our assessments. You're going to have the base assessment stuff. You're going to have the on-field, on-court assessment. You're also going to be able to put in all your stats. So if you have stats like Game Changer or other devices that you use to gather your stats on the teams that you play on, you can put those all in here so you can have a very good portfolio of how you did, how many, if you're in baseball or softball, how many bats you had, hits, home runs, stolen bases. This can all be in one location for you. So you can have this as a nice portfolio. Then we're going to get into some metrics, right? We talked about the metrics before. So you're going to have all of your metrics listed here. This example is hitting metrics with an exit velocity, total spin off the bat, launch angle, distance in feet. So we're going to be able to get this, and our evaluators may use different equipment. That's why so many different products are up here, depending on what they have access to. And these are all the different types of metrics we have for softball and baseball currently. There will be different types of metrics for all sports that we are in. Then we're going to move into the benchmarks. So this is going to be what your assessments are telling you as an individual athlete. They are athlete specific. So we're going to be telling you what we feel you need to work on to, one, become a better athlete, better mover, and two, to be better fundamentally at the sport that you play in. So with the base assessment, there's going to be different categories. This one is one of the more simple tests that we do on the athlete. And this is a standing toe touch. And the objective is to touch your toes while keeping your knees completely straight for 3 seconds. This athlete got a 2 out of 3, meaning they were only able to touch their ankles for 3 seconds while keeping their knees straight. So with that, they're going to get a specific corrective exercise for mobility and motor control from our Director of Sports Medicine and Performance, Anthony Inzillo, taking them through what they need to do. Great thing about our program is if the athlete gets a 1, they're going to get a completely different set of exercises so that there's a step process to get up to that 3. I personally have seen these high impact exercises take a kid from a 1 to a 3 within a month and a half. So I've seen the proof there that it does work, and it's incredible how quickly it can work and get some of that joint mobility back or flexibility back in the athlete. From the benchmark on the sport specific side, you're going to get same type of things for benchmarks that you do in the base. So you're going to have an objective. This in particular was a leg lift for pitching. These are the objectives of the leg lift here. And then you would have the flags associated with each of those performances. toe dominant lift. So you're going to get a corrected video. And it's going to be our director of pitching, who's currently in the Olympics, Josh Zide. And he's going to take you through, how to be more stable through your back foot into the arch, and how to not have that toe dominant lift, but more 3 points of contact with your back foot. Lastly, I'd like to talk about Sports Thread. So Sports Thread, again, is how you self-promote. You can put all of your SAT scores, your videos, your stats in here, your metrics, and then you can connect with college coaches across the country through this platform. Send them your portfolio, send them a link, say, hey, I'd like you to check out, my profile. This is all the great things I've been working on, and really open those lines of communications with the colleges that you'd like to attend. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Anthony, who's going to go over the B.A.S.E assessment in a little more detail.
All right, thank you, Brian. So I'll try to make this really quick, just so we have some time for questions afterward. But overall here at Area Scouts, our goal, as you've heard, is to help every athlete reach their full potential, keep them playing their sport that they love as long as possible, avoid burnout, allow them to reach whichever level they would like to reach. And to accomplish that, really comes down to being able to do two things for them to give them those tools. We need to, one, keep them healthy so that they can stay on the field, and then also help them improve their performance so that they can earn those opportunities for playing time and opportunities at the next level. So our training programs are directed at helping achieve those goals. But before we can give them the correct training program, it first comes down to doing a really good, thorough assessment to see where they currently are. So during the B.A.S.E assessment, it's very comprehensive, try to leave no stone unturned when it came to different things that we're looking at in the assessment. So in the biomechanics section, we're really looking at fundamental movement patterns. There's 7 different movement patterns we look at, all of which require a different combination of joint mobility from several different joints, muscle flexibility, strength, stability, the motor control to put all those pieces together. So, the goal isn't, you saw a toe touch example. The goal isn't saying, okay, this athlete can touch their toes, they're a great athlete. We try to use that section to pick up very specific limitations in an athlete's motion or strength or stability somewhere, so that they don't have any physical limitations, and that their coach is able to mold them, and they're able to perform the movements or get into the positions that their coaches would like them to get into without having physical limitations. Another example in that section is an overhead squat test. So to squat low, get into a deep squat, it requires a lot of ankle mobility. If someone scores poorly on the squat, they're going to receive a corrective exercise, most likely to work on their ankle mobility. And that's important that we can pick that up, because having good ankle dorsiflexion mobility allows you to run fast. Run properly allows athletes to get low, and offensive and defensive linemen to get low into their stance. And if they don't have that level of ankle mobility, they're going to be compensations off the chain. They're not going to be able to do what their coach is asking them to do. So it really helps to just set an overall physical foundation. So after the biomechanics section, which is really our most foundational piece, then move into athleticism, where we're looking at several tests of strength and power, both for the upper body and lower body. So if athletes don't have the expected amount of strength compared to their peers and their age groups, then they'll be provided with corrective exercises to address those things. Next, we move into sequence, and when we talk about sequence, we're referring to the kinematic sequence, which is basically how efficiently the body is able to transfer power from the legs through the core to the arms. That force transfer is important in developing power, specifically in any rotational athlete, like pitchers or hitters or golfers. And after that, we move into the endurance section, where we're looking both at cardiovascular endurance as well as endurance of the core muscles. So fatigue is another risk factor for both injury and for poor performance. So that's another important piece of our assessment that we're looking for. And just most importantly, there are baseline expectations for what each athlete should score on each of these tests. And as you saw a piece of, we provide corrective exercises that are very targeted to address any deficits that we find. Overall, like I said, we're just trying to ensure that athletes don't have any physical limitations that are going to affect them on the field to decrease their performance or increase their risk of suffering an injury.
All right. And quickly, I'd just like to say any athletes out there or parents that want to sign their athlete up for an assessment or even get just a free profile, they can go on there. There's also a nutrition assessment they can take for free, as well as a athletic mindset assessment that they can take on their profile as well. You can go to app.areascouts.com, click on sign up, athlete sign up, and you can create a profile there. And also, if you go to our main page, www.areascouts.com, there's a Get Evaluated section there on the top tab you can click on. And please also check out the events. So our events are getting to be countrywide now, and we're setting up many events over the next couple months. So go to the events page, select the state you're in, and see if there's anything there. If there's not, you should check back in the next month or two. We are moving across the country, setting up these events pretty much every Saturday, starting on August 7th. So please go there, check out where the events are going to be, and come out and get evaluated.
We have a couple minutes here. We like to keep these around an hour. So I'm going to do 3 questions for, I think they're all between Anthony and Brian. So number 1, with the scoring system, what happens once an athlete scores high on this test? If this is a monthly program, what is the next step for my son after having success with the initial assessment? So Anthony, that's a good one for you.
Yeah, so there's not a maximum score on the test. So regardless, there's always going to be something that an athlete is going to be able to improve on and get better on. Haven't seen any athlete just ace the entire assessment. There's always something that they can work on, that they'll receive correctives for. And then once they, complete go through that process and we're happy with their performance on that, they go on to the on-field assessment where they can work on more sport specific and become evaluated on sport specific and their position specific abilities. But this is really the base assessment is really the foundation to see if they have the physical tools to perform well in their sport.
And I would say access to the development material is monthly, but the reassessments, there is time that it does take to readjust and increase that mobility, increase that flexibility. So we usually look at a reassessment, anywhere between 3 to 6 months to kind of look at it. And you have to realize with youth athletes as well, from the ages of, 11, 12, 13, 14, their bodies are going through so many changes. So you really do want to do those reassessments because, there's growth spurts and there's, being uncoordinated or unbalanced can really, affect the play on the field, and getting ahead of it and getting it recognized during the reassessments is important.
Brian, you touched on it once. I think there's a lot of people, coaches and parents out there that believe that, seeing an athlete perform on the field, they're under the assumption that athlete is moving perfectly and that everything is, they're in top shape as far as a movement assessment would go. And Brian can tell you some of those top athletes that he's worked with that he would think would have aced the base assessment have, definitely had a lot of issues that they needed to work on. So I feel like we get this question a lot because you probably have a son or daughter that, is probably one of the top players in their on their team. And kind of think they are at that maximum level, but chances are very good that they are not, and that they will need to work on a lot of this stuff to keep them healthy. That's the number one thing. Thanks for doing these presentations, guys. This is my third one, and I look forward to these every week. I am a PT in the Chicago area. Can you please do a quick explanation of the difference between this and a typical FMS? Anthony.
So a typical FMS, our biomechanics section is similar to an FMS. We're looking at some overlapping movement patterns, but other movement patterns that are not covered in the FMS. The scoring method is similar, but there are different objectives that we're looking for. So that's the only really comparison to the FMS is a similarity in the style of the biomechanics portion. The athleticism, sequence, and endurance portion, 100% different.
And Henry, that's Henry. And Henry, we are in the near future here going to start putting together a list of authorized PTs so that we do have access to people that we can refer athletes to. So please send us an email to contact@Area Scouts. Just send us your information. We'd love to put you in the database there to reach out to in the future. What correlation have you seen with increase in B.A.S.E scores and those same athletes increasing the performance on the field after improving those scores? Do you have any current data on that?
So I think it's still early in our process, and we're collecting a lot of that data. And we're still very young, but a lot of the tests that are used, during that I chose to be in the B.A.S.E assessment, there's a lot of data just historically in the literature for many of those different tests in regards to mainly the research is mainly in regards to injury risk. If they scored, this number on this test, then they were less likely to suffer an injury, things like that. There's not so much literature on there with how the tests correlate to performance improvement, but like I said, we're still collecting data to be able to report on those things a little bit better.
Yeah, and same on that subject. That is one of our number one goals. We are only a year into this, so we have grown incredibly since we have started. We have just we haven't been able to do everything that we want to do yet, but that is definitely a priority of mine personally too, to not only have that correlation with the improvement in performance, but I am really anxious and it may take a year or two down the road from now to get those numbers on how many of our athletes are actually staying healthy, not just the performance side, but actually staying on the field. Because as you know, it doesn't matter how good you perform on the field. If you're hurt, you're not doing anything. So those numbers are going to have that correlation between both performance and health down the road. So being two of our main objectives here.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to prove things like that. Sometimes it's hard to prove things like that in a research study because there are so many different variables out there. But anecdotally and from a common sense factor, the better someone moves, the better their level of mobility and strength and endurance and speed and athleticism and all the things we're looking at. They certainly correlate to improved performance on the field.
Especially with kids too. You could get a 13-year-old that does the base exam and then does one 6 months later, but they just grew 3 inches and put on 20 pounds. And of course they're going to hit the ball harder or throw harder, just naturally. It doesn't even, won't even have that because of the base. But so yeah, there's a lot of variables there, but it would still, we still would like to have that number attached to health-wise, at least, to know that those kids are staying on the field while going through our program. That's, again, a huge part of why we started this. So thank you, everyone. We did good, 9:05. So thank you, everyone, for joining us again, and appreciate you taking the time, Siddeeq. Looking forward to seeing everything you're going to do out there. Excited to have you on board.
Excited to be here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.